A radio with the battery pulled out of it does not make a sound, which is the only reason Grant can't let this go, because his did. Grant had been a backcountry ranger in the Bob Marshall for 9 years. Deep country patrols, the kind of postings where you're days from a road and the radio is the only human voice you'll hear for a week. He knew that radio the way you know a tool you trust your life to. That night he was camped alone on an overnight patrol, weather turning. He'd had trouble with the radio all evening, a whine, a rattle in the speaker, the battery draining faster than it should. So he did what you do. Shut it off, pulled the battery pack, set both pieces on a rock by his tent to deal with in the morning. A radio in 2 pieces, no power to it at all. Around midnight it turned on, not a crackle of static, a transmission, a voice, clear, coming out of a speaker with no battery in it, and Grant sat straight up in his bag, because that is not a thing that can happen. There is no version of the physics where a powered-down handset with the battery 3 feet away produces a human voice. The message was short. A man's voice, calm but strained, giving a call sign Grant didn't recognize and a set of coordinates, then the words requesting assistance, over. Grant grabbed the radio. The battery was still on the rock where he'd left it. The handset in his hand was dead, dark, no lights. He put the battery back with shaking hands, powered it up, and called dispatch. Dispatch had nothing. No call in their logs at that time. No unit assigned to that call sign. And when he read them the coordinates, there was a pause, and the dispatcher told him they were deep in a section of the wilderness with no trail, no camp, no reason for any unit to be there. Then, 20 minutes later, with the battery seated and the radio fully powered, it came again. Same voice, same call sign, same coordinates, same 4 words. Requesting assistance, over. Identical, like a recording played back. Grant answered it. He said his name, his unit, asked them to respond, asked if they needed help. Nothing came back. It never came back after that. He did not sleep. At first light, he hiked toward those coordinates himself because he's a ranger and a man had called for help. He found nothing. No camp, no gear, no person, no sign anyone had ever been there. Grant filed a report and he told me it doesn't capture the only part that matters. The first time he heard that voice, his radio was lying in 2 pieces on a rock. There's no answer for that. He's never found one. A distress call from a radio with the battery pulled out. Coordinates pointing at empty wilderness, the same message twice, and no one ever there. Before the next account, tell me what time it is where you are right now. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. We're pushing toward 10,000 subscribers before the end of the month. If this account means something to you, hit subscribe. Everyone counts. And here's what I can't answer. Something called for help from a place with no one in it, on a radio that couldn't receive. Was it a real call bouncing in from somewhere impossible? A man who needed help that Grant could never reach? Or is it worse that there was never a man at all, and something just wanted a ranger to come to those coordinates alone in the dark? Drop your answer below. The distress call came from a part of the forest that had been closed to every living person for 3 weeks, and Maria was standing with 4 other people who all heard it at once. Maria was leading a small assessment crew into a closed sector of the Gila. A fire had come through hard that season and the whole area was shut. No public access, no camping, no patrols, because burned ground drops trees and rock without warning, and it isn't safe to be under. Her crew of 5 had a permit and a job, mapping the damage. They were the only people authorized in that sector, and as far as anyone knew, the only ones in it at all. Early afternoon, working a ridge, the radio put out a distress call. A voice, calm, a little formal, reporting an injured party and giving a location. And the location was inside the closed sector, deeper in, past where her crew was, in ground nobody had walked in 3 weeks because walking it could get you killed. Maria's whole crew stopped. 5 people, all looking at the radio, because a closed sector means empty. There is no one in there to be injured. That's the entire point of closing it. They tried a callback. Her second asked the caller to identify, asked for a status, asked them to repeat their location. What came back was not an answer. It was the same transmission word for word, the same calm voice reporting the same injured party at the same location, as if her crew hadn't spoken at all. Like it wasn't hearing them. Not a conversation, just a message repeating. Now, here's where Maria wants to be careful, and I want to be careful with her. Protocol is protocol. A distress call means someone might be hurt, and you respond. So they moved toward the location, carefully, the way you move through burned country, and they called out the whole way in. They found nothing. No injured party. No person. No gear. No fresh tracks in ground that takes a track cleanly after a burn. Nothing that explained a voice reporting an emergency from a place sealed off and empty for 3 weeks. The transmission never came again once they reached the coordinates. It went down as an unresolved false call, the box you check when there's nothing else to check. Maria has thought about it for 2 years, and she keeps landing on the same thing. It wasn't that the call was strange, it's that it reported an injured party. It wanted them to come, and it gave them a location deeper into the most dangerous ground in the forest, the one place a smart crew would never have gone on their own. A distress call from a sector sealed and empty for 3 weeks, repeating word for word when they answered, pulling a crew deeper into burned ground that could kill them. Here's what I keep turning over. A real distress call responds when you answer it. This one didn't. It just repeated, like it wasn't listening, like the point was never to talk. Was it a real emergency echoing in from somewhere else? A person Maria's crew could never help? Or is it worse that the message was the whole plan? That something used the one-call a ranger is trained to never ignore to walk 5 people into the most dangerous place it could find? Tell me which one you land on. The last account connects them because the third ranger recognized the voice. He'd heard it before. That's next. The third time Eli heard that voice, he already knew what it was going to say because he'd heard it twice before, and that was the part that made his hands go cold. Not the message. Eli worked dispatch and night patrol for the Olympic, 12 years on the radio. Do that job long enough and the radio becomes an extension of your own ears. You know every voice on your frequency, every unit, every quirk of how the signal behaves in that terrain. Eli knew that channel better than he knew most people, which is why, months before the night this account is really about, he'd flagged something and been told to let it go. Twice, on quiet nights, a transmission had come across his frequency that didn't belong to anyone. A man's voice, calm, giving a call sign that wasn't active and coordinates that didn't lead anywhere, asking for assistance. Both times he'd logged it as a stray signal, bleed over from another band, and almost convinced himself. Then came the night it said his name. He was alone on a night dispatch shift. Quiet channel, low weather, nothing moving. And the transmission came in. The same calm voice from those 2 earlier nights, he was certain of it. Same cadence exactly. It gave the dead call sign. It gave the coordinates that went nowhere. And then, instead of requesting assistance, it said, "Eli, we need you to come." It used his name. On a frequency where he had never once said his own first name out loud. You use call signs and unit numbers, not names. That's the whole discipline of radio. Nobody on that channel had a reason to know his first name was Eli, and the voice that shouldn't have existed said it like it knew him. He didn't answer. He sat in that dispatch chair with the hair up on his neck and did not key the mic, because every instinct he'd built over 12 years was screaming that answering was exactly what it wanted. The transmission came once more. "Eli, we need you to come." Then the channel went quiet, and it stayed quiet, and in the years since, Eli has never heard the voice again. Now, I'll be honest about what I can and can't say here. Eli believes those were the same transmissions the other two Rangers heard. The same voice, the same dead call sign, the same request. I can't prove that. I wasn't on that frequency, and neither were you. What I can tell you is that a 12-year radio man whose entire job was telling real signals from noise heard something call him by a name it had no way to know, from a place that wasn't there, and it frightened him badly enough that he left night dispatch not long after. Draw your own line. He's drawn his. A voice on a dead call sign that a dispatcher heard 3 separate times, that finally said his first name on a channel where he'd never spoken it. Here's the real question. The first 2 times it asked for help like anyone would. The third time it asked for him, by name. What changes something from calling for rescue to calling for a specific person? Is it worse if it learned his name over those months, or if it knew it all along and was just waiting to use it? Tell me which sits worse with you. Subscribe to Obscure Nights right now. 3 rangers, 3 forests, a dead radio, a closed sector, a dispatch channel at night. None of them ever worked together, and here's the thread, because it isn't the voice, though the voice is strange enough. It's the ask. Every one of these transmissions wanted someone to come. A distress call to a lone ranger, an injured party deep in dangerous ground, a man called for by his own name. Everyone was trying to move a person to a place. I'm not going to tell you what it was. I don't know, and neither do they, and one of them spent 12 years learning to tell a real signal from a false one and still can't explain it. What I'll give you instead is the part that keeps you alive, because the rangers who walked away all did the same thing right. They didn't go alone, and they didn't go blind. Lesson 1. A distress call is a reason to be careful, not a reason to abandon caution. Every instinct in a good person says, drop everything and run toward someone in trouble. But note the time, the frequency, the exact wording, and the coordinates before you move a single step. A real emergency will still be real in 5 minutes. Something that isn't real is counting on you not to stop and think. Lesson 2. Never respond to a call alone if you can help it, especially at night. Grant went to those coordinates by himself at first light and found nothing, and he was lucky it was nothing. Maria's crew went in together, 5 of them, calling out the whole way. If a signal is pulling you somewhere, the worst way to arrive is alone, and the best protection you have is other people who know exactly where you're going. Lesson 3. Carry more than one way to call for help, and trust the instinct that says, don't answer. A maintained radio, a satellite communicator, a PLB. Because the one thing all 3 of these accounts share is a radio doing something a radio shouldn't. And Eli's story is the one to remember. He didn't key that mic because everything he'd learned told him not to. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do with a voice that shouldn't exist is refuse to answer it. Thank you for trusting Obscure Nights with these accounts. If you have an encounter of your own, our submission email is in the channel bio. We read every single one. This is Obscure Nights, where the cases nobody talks about get told the way they actually happened. Good night.